Thank you so much for attending this event. It's like I said before, it's all about learning how to increase mental stillness, enjoyment, and ease of meditation. And this is something that I really wanted to create something that was beginning, like that was sort of beginning level, that was very simple. So if people don't have a meditative practice at all, that they can still do this and they can have some really good effects from this. And it was kind of like a challenge for me too, because my ultimate intention was to be able to share, some of the things that I've been discovering, some of the things I've been working on, and have something where, people can then have a meditative experience and experience a high level of mental quiet, because that's one of the things that I hear in workshops a lot of times is people will do these meditations, will guide them through processes, but the problem is if people have trouble getting into a place of like mental quiet, like a stillness, then their experience of being able to get deep into these meditations is interrupted by mental chatter. And mental chatter could be sort of the voice in your back of your head who's causing you to doubt experiences, or is asking questions and kind of taking a step back from things while you're in the middle of it. All of these things that sort of resist the ability to just go deep into the meditation. So this is one of those things that no matter how deep people are typically able to go into meditation, this is one of those things where even people who've been meditating for a long time, if you can give a couple extra techniques for them to get even further into this and have an even greater experience of this, then this will, would be something that would help out. Okay, so what I'd like to do is just start off by just saying just a couple words about myself. My name is Paul, for those who don't know me. Most of you have had a workshop with me, and we're friends on Facebook, something like that. And what I do primarily is I teach a 4-day workshop called Awakening the Illuminated Heart. My teacher is Jung Melchizedek. He's the one who wrote the Flower of Life, Volume 1 and 2. He is just an amazing human being, amazing teacher. And, there's so much that I've learned and I've expanded from through teaching the workshop. And when I was originally a student taking the workshop, I studied with him directly, both in Sedona and in Mexico. And it's amazing because I have had my own meditative practice for years, but the process of stepping into a place of teaching, it's just amazing to see all the sort of richness of variety of where people are at and where people come from, and certain things that might be really easy for one person that might be more challenging for another. So I just wanted to share this in such a way that it would kind of help everyone out. And it's sort of like, for a weird example, but like TV shows, sometimes if you watch a TV show and it's a very plot driven and there's all these things happening, but they want to give opening for people who are brand new to it to come in and just kind of jump in and start to kind of catch them up on this. So I kind of took this as a challenge to say, well, how can I introduce a process, something that I've discovered relatively recently, that through my own meditation I've kind of developed it, something that can help anyone get to a deeper state of meditation. So what I do is I teach the 4-day workshop, Awakening the Illuminated Heart. I was personally certified by Jung Melchizedek. I studied with him in Mexico for the teacher training, and I also, like I mentioned before, had studied with him personally in Arizona before that. And in addition to that, I recently was certified as a master practitioner of NLP. And for those who aren't familiar with that methodology, it's basically about helping people make very rapid changes. It's sort of like looking at where people are at consciously, and it uses sort of their focus, their physiology, their consciousness in certain ways to make shifts quickly. So some people might have fears or phobias or whatever and help them change quickly. There's all these different tools and processes that I really won't get into in this because it's beyond the scope of what we're talking about today. But one of the things that I love about NLP is it's just these short techniques and these short methods to help people make shifts quickly. So one of the things I've actually been working on and developing is ways to use that to help with consciousness and to help with meditation and to do these other things that maybe not so much in terms of phobias and those type of things, although I do private sessions over Skype for people with that. But I'm primarily interested in, well, how does human consciousness function? How can we do things differently to help everything, to help people make rapid changes in other areas of their life rather than just phobias or those type of things, to deepen meditation and those type of processes as well. And how I develop these materials is I do my own research and reading, of course, but I do go into meditation. I do some work in the Akashic records, and all of those are sort of these different channels for information that come forward. But what I really love to do is to make sure that it's just purely step by step. It's very experiential, something that people can just plug into and start doing the steps, and then they'll have a good result with it. Not something that's very convoluted and esoteric. It's something that might have sort of an esoteric function to it, but something that's ultimately very pragmatic, very practical, that will that will help people get to the next stage of meditation, or whatever that might be, whatever might matter to them. Okay, so what I'd like to do is talk about meditation and consciousness in general. And one of the things that's kind of interesting is a lot of times there's groups will have be part of a religion, or they will be part of it's sort of like communal or societal groups that will be have these religious practices. But in terms of people that are actually really diving in to experience their nature, their consciousness, and do things to make shifts, it's actually a relatively small percentage for the whole planet. It's actually interesting because it's becoming more and more like that is really on the increase. And for me, it's all about freedom. Is a lot of times what happens is there is these different blocks, and we might not be aware of them. We might just have a coworker, friend, or family member say something and trigger us, and maybe it might not make reasonable sense of like exactly why we got so triggered by what this person said, but in the moment it really seriously affected us. Maybe we withdrew, maybe we turned and we were harsh with them when they didn't deserve that. And so for me, it's learning how to understand what's happening in consciousness, learn how to open up and discover these sort of shadow elements of consciousness to find these blocks and transform them. Because for my experience is the more you can deepen your consciousness and expand your awareness, expand your capacity to feel compassion and love and connectedness, with all beings and all of these different aspects, the more you are free to participate in the world. And Buddhism is really interesting as an example, because there's the Mahayana Hinayana school. There's the Mahayana school of like embracing the world, and then there's sort of like the Theravada or Hinayana school of sort of a monk in seclusion. So sort of more what I'm talking about, of course it's not really specifically Buddhist, but it's more of that example of how can you take consciousness and embody more of that and bring that more into the world to help the world be a better place, rather than just people having illumination experiences in a cave, or a monastery off somewhere. So one of the things that's really important for me is working with these shadow aspects. And I just picked this image. I love this image. There's the whole idea of light and shadow and consciousness is you can think about it the conscious mind or the subconscious mind. And when we get into states of meditation and this sort of meditative state where consciousness can reflect itself, we are more able to see these areas where we might not be free. And there's other ways of doing it too, like psychotherapy. There's all kinds of different modalities where we can kind of start to investigate our own interiors, both through meditative means and also through psychology and those type of things. But it's one of those things where it's becoming more and more prevalent, as I said before, but it's very seldom an easy process. One of the things about this, if anyone's ever done a cleanse, like taken some sort of, sort of either master cleanse or some type of cleansing program, a lot of times what will happen is if you're doing a fast or a cleanse, you might feel a little bit feverish. You might feel almost like you're getting sick. And most people, the first cleanse that they ever do, if they're not sure what this is all about, like they didn't expect that to happen, basically what it is it will actually feel like you're hurting yourself. It can feel to a certain extent that you are actually causing yourself to get sick. But what's actually really happening is that those toxins, those little elements that are sort of trapped in your tissue, these little impurities will actually, through doing the different types of cleanses, will draw out of your tissues. A lot of times what it is, it's these little toxins that are surrounded by fat and water in such a way that it buffers it. It sort of creates these little structures in your body to hold these until it can safely be eliminated. Well, as soon as you start doing some type of cleanse, what happens is those toxins are freed up. They get into the bloodstream, and as soon as they're in the bloodstream, there's this feeling of this fever, like this sort of elevated temperature, sort of the feeling of you're getting sick, feeling run down, all of these things. And if you're not aware of what this is, it can be very easy to think that that you're actually doing something harmful to yourself. You're actually harming your health rather than helping it. Well, what this is I feel like this is a good physiological example of making the unconscious conscious. So these elements, these toxins, these whatever you could say is in your system, and getting them to the point where they're in your bloodstream so they can be processed and they can be moved out. This is one of those positive things you can do, even though it doesn't necessarily feel good in the moment. One of the things about about meditation and these processes, especially the process we'll talk about a little bit called shadow work, and it was popularized by Carl Jung, which we'll talk about in just a little bit, is that when you increase the energy, you increase the vibration that's flowing through someone's system, what ends up happening is it's a catalyst that causes these things to shift. And all of those areas of your life that might not be a fit to where you're moving are going to come up. And that's when you have the idea of sort of your sort of divine appointments, people that are sort of reflecting certain things to you. One of the examples I like to use is, everyone had the experience of growing up and hitting those growth spurts where maybe your shoes didn't fit right anymore, or certain clothes didn't fit right anymore, and you'd start for example, your toe might rub on a certain part of your shoe as your foot grew. And what's happening when all of these things are coming up into your awareness is basically your consciousness is sort of rubbing against the limit of something. It's sort of coming up against the barrier, and you're starting to feel that friction and that discomfort. And what that is that's just the same as the toxins getting into your bloodstream to be eliminated. That's something that your consciousness and your higher intelligence, and whatever you'd like to say, brings into your awareness to bring your attention to it. And for you to, in the same way, just the toxins get into your bloodstream to be eliminated, it doesn't feel great in the moment, but it's one of those things where if you go through the process and you allow those things, instead of fighting them, you allow them to facilitate awareness, and you learn from them, you grow from them, you process them according to like the different practices, different ways of doing shadow work, of like working and integrating these things, the more you can become more and more free. Another example of this is that, heat, like vibration, something is, when you increase the heat of something, that heat itself becomes catalyst. So say, for example, if you have 2 cups of tea or 2 cups of coffee, and if you're doing like a French press or whatever, and one you pour hot water in and the other you pour cold water in, well, heat is a catalyst. The one that you pour hot water in is going to turn into coffee. If you follow the way of using a French press to make coffee, it'll become coffee. If you just put cold water in, you don't have that extra heat to be the catalyst to pull those elements from the coffee grounds into the water itself. There's actually, you can do what's called cold press coffee, where you do it at room temperature, but you let it sit for a really long time. And what that does is that draws the elements out, but it leaves all of the oil behind. It's because oil is cut by hot water. So it's just a couple little moments, a couple little things about that. Another thing too is that another example is candles. So most people have had the experience of getting maybe a wax candle that's like this white wax, and you look at the top of it, it might have this, if it's been burned before, it's this curled over black wick. You light it, and as soon as you light it, you see after a little bit of time the wax starting to melt, and the wax that was kind of opaque, but you couldn't really see through it. As soon as that happens, it becomes more like water. And when you get that watery thing, you can see all those little bits of wick, all those little black flecks in the wax where you weren't aware of that before. And what it was is the vibration, it's the energy, it's the increased temperature of the wax that allows you to perceive those little tiny bits of wicks, the little old burned bits of wick. So one of the things that's really important to know is that if you can feel these things and really have some way of sensing beyond just your normal cognitive sensing, or maybe you're working with a teacher that can guide you through these things, if you're starting to have sort of like what's called a spiritual crisis or a dark night of the soul, those types of things, it's very important for someone to encourage you along to say, yeah, you're doing cleanse. These things are coming up. All these things are coming into your awareness to be transmuted and cleared, and you'll become freer and more in a higher state when you're done with it. Because the temptation can be to, as soon as you feel discomfort, to run away from it and say, okay, well this isn't working. I'm hurting myself. This doesn't feel good. Whatever it might be. It's really important to be able to read that and to really be able to sense what that is. And in my opinion, when you are triggered by events and you do your shadow work with them, you find some way of working with it, and then transmuting them and getting those awarenesses and moving on. The more you do that, the less those little unconscious bits of material are with you to trigger you. And the more you do that, the more you are actually returning back to sort of being the causal point of your own experience. And I like to think of it this way, that if you do not reflect on your own awareness, your own consciousness, and you are basically always getting triggered by things, and you're not investigating, you're not really doing anything to dig into to sense it at another level, what ends up happening is you end up just riding the waves that are caused by these causal points. These things themselves might not be in your conscious awareness. They're causing these ripples and waves in your life, and you're just at the effect of them. You're just being moved by them. You're just kind of, going up and down in the wake of these currents that you don't really feel like you have any conscious connection to, no real understanding of, and no way to resolve them, to clear these causal points. Another thing too is that in terms of working with these shadow aspects, and here I'll go down to the next slide, and I just love this quote. It's by Carl Jung. I'm currently reading his book, The Red Book, which is it's really great. It's basically his writings that he wrote that he didn't want published in his lifetime because he didn't want people to think he was crazy. So, so it's a good read. It's good stuff. But one does not become enlightened by imagining figures of light, but by making the darkness conscious. So this idea of being able to shift awareness, to be able to expand more and to take in the shadowy unconscious aspects of ourselves are extremely important. And one of the things that I've kind of found is that the more we transmute these shadows and these limitations, the more our life becomes free. And one other example that I like to say, that I like to express shadow work in, is that usually when there's some sort of wounding early on in our life, and we have these difficult things, if we can't fully process it in the moment, a lot of times if we feel weak in the moment, what will happen is we will tend to project sort of a strained and inauthentic strength. So if we feel, say for example, how we feel ugly, at some point we had some traumatic experience in life, maybe the person might be really fixated on physical beauty, what they perceive to be physical beauty, and sort of this feeling of an exerting the equal and opposite thing in the opposite direction. And the phrase I kind of came up with for this is, with shadows and shadow work, what's really happening is we're really trying to get the world to see us in the way that we haven't been able to see ourselves. And the times that we felt weak, if we haven't fully healed and integrated that, and some part of us still feels weak, we're seeking to project an image to get validated by other people of how they perceive us as strong, to kind of pacify that. But still, that's getting tied up in polarity, not being able to be fully free of that feeling. It's really just a matter of still being at the mercy of that. So that's one of the things that I think is really interesting, and what I just love about working with spirituality, psychology in terms of transmuting shadows, being able to do some type of inquiry process to help unravel certain fixed points of view that might not be based on anything that's actually true. For me, that's why spirituality and consciousness is like, I kind of feel like it's the best game in town. I feel like when I can unravel something and I can see through something that I thought was true and I know that it isn't, and I can just see it all just magically sort of dissipate, and I can get up and stand and move in the world in a different way, and I can feel that I'm not limited by that little illusory point of view that I had about that thing. And a lot of times we get up and we drive our cars, we do work, we make money, whatever it is we do in our daily lives. But a lot of times really what's happening is we're sort of being invited to greater consciousness. These things are coming into our awareness for the sake of helping to facilitate a deeper awareness about our lives. And it's kind of like we're playing a game, and there's these game pieces moving around. And we're going through a process of moving these pieces around, but we've kind of forgotten we're playing a game, and we get so fixated on the pieces themselves. And I feel like a lot of the elements in our lives are the game pieces, and what's really happening is the evolution and unfoldment of spirit is the game itself. I feel like it's the game we've forgotten we're playing. So, I mean, that's just my point of view. I just wanted to share that. Another thing that I'd like to share really briefly is, in getting this talk ready, I was thinking, what are some ways that I can share some really simple tools and analogies to help clarify certain things about spirit and about consciousness. So in terms of shadows, the whole thing of, like I said, the equal and opposite thing, if we feel a weakness, we'll tend to project the equal and opposite thing for that. In terms of levels of consciousness, we've all had experiences where we felt this extended or enhanced type of consciousness, where we felt sort of this expanded awareness, like we just know, and we're sort of just sitting upon this seat of clarity. But and then sometimes, I know we've all had this experience of diving down into something and feeling so stuck that we didn't have perspective. And I just wanted to share that as an example of expanding consciousness and focusing consciousness. One of the two little examples I like to give is the idea of a game. And like I just mentioned before, the whole thing about game pieces is, I feel that expanding in levels of consciousness, it's sort of the same thing as like the forest and the trees. You can take in the whole forest, or you can just focus on one tree. But what's essential is being able to fluidly move back and forth. And for the whole thing of games, if we've all played games with people who've taken it too seriously and get all upset, and they said, oh, well, this is unfair, and you did this and you did that, and it's just, they feel like things are that they're being ganged up on or whatever it is. Instead of just enjoying and having fun with the game, they start to get attached to the orange money and the game pieces moving around the board and those type of things. So but the thing is, if you just basically step back and are totally non-attached, you're detached from everything, then the game really isn't that fun. And we've all played games with people who have gotten so into the game and gotten upset, and maybe they're upset days later about how so-and-so really stuck it to them when they landed on their property or whatever it is. But at the same time, we've all had people that have just kind of been disconnected and detached from the whole thing and just really don't care. They make money, they lose money, it doesn't matter. And I think in terms of consciousness, it's most important to be able to dive in and then come out, and dive in and come out, where you're embracing all of it. You're embracing the small little minute details and how beautiful they can be, and then the big picture as well. Another example would be like romantic comedies. If someone will go and go to a movie, say for example like a couple, and maybe the woman is really into this certain movie, and the guy is like, okay, I'm the boyfriend, I'm trying to be a good boyfriend and go along, whatever, but maybe they don't have any interest in it. But what that is say for example, if they go along for the ride, but they're totally detached from the whole thing. If they step back and they really don't care if that couple gets together or not at the end, maybe they just kind of say, okay, well, yeah, I know the director who made this, I know the people who did this, I basically know that this is going to work out, that they're going to get together, so they don't allow themselves to go along for the ride. So, the ideal thing is to allow yourself to be taken along for the ride, to move down and to really focus and feel the whole journey and the whole process that they're going through, to really go on the ride fully. So for me, some people think that consciousness is all about going really high and being really sort of floating on a cloud. But for me, it's all about going in and feeling all of the little bits of the human experience, and then being able to step outside of it and really reflect back on it. And I feel like both of those kind of support each other. So what I'd like to talk about next is the whole idea of freedom. And a lot of times what ends up happening is, say for example, most people have seen The Matrix. One of the examples in the Matrix movie is that there's this computer simulated reality, and that everyone's just in these little pods, and they're moving through these imaginal realities. But really what's happening is their bodies, it's all an illusion, because their bodies are connected to this power grid. So they're actually being used, but what's happening is their mind is being entertained to make them feel as if they have freedom. Well, I'm not saying that that's literally true, but I'm just going to say that one of the reasons why I really wanted to focus on mental clarity and being able to sink deep into meditation in this call, in this presentation, is that a lot of times our thoughts function in that same way. If we have certain points of view, or if we're critical of certain things, if we have certain experiences we're attaching to, or we're pushing away from us, if we're separating the world from us through judgment, fixed points of view that are not based on anything true, then basically what happens is those judgments and those points of views will be holding us in place, just like a fish. So say for example, the fish just keeps swimming around without perceiving that that movement doesn't equal freedom. It can keep moving, but it's moving in its own small sphere. And in the same way, if we give into the same habitual thoughts and the habit of thought, just the whole thing of just thought after thought after thought, without any freedom to really fully experience things. Because what ends up happening is, when we just have excessive thought, a lot of times we're just getting into judgment about things and thinking about things rather than just fully experiencing them. And one of the things too is that, say for example, if someone was in a really comfortable room and it was padded and everything was all provided for them, if there was no way to leave, no matter how comfortable that room would be, it would still be a prison. It would be some form of house arrest. It would be some form of bondage, because they wouldn't have the freedom to get beyond it. And what I'm just going to suggest and kind of just put out there is the possibility that there are a lot of ways in which our sort of habitual ways of moving, the mental chatter, all of those things can present variety rather than freedom. It feels like we're always moving, and because we're always moving, we have freedom, but maybe those thoughts and those things are sort of like a fish swimming around in a bowl. It feels like because you're moving, you have freedom, but you just don't. And this is just an example too of like, someone can have whatever they like in terms of being in a room, being in something. It could be the most comfortable room, that they could imagine, have everything they like. But if there's no way of them stepping outside of that reality, stepping outside of that room, then still they're a prisoner. And I don't mean to be too dramatic of saying, if you don't have a completely placid, still mind, that you're a prisoner. I'm just saying that the more you tend to be able to just dive into full experience without having the mental chatter, being able to have a really beautiful meditation and love the feeling of being within itself, the more freedom you feel, the less you will feel attached to the external things, like in terms of need, like a neediness. The more you'll feel like a natural joyfulness and a natural fullness, and all of those things, those experiences during the day, those interactions with people, those relationships, those experiences will just add even more joy and even more fullness to your already, full state and, state of, the energetic abundance. And that just sort of like, general fullness and happiness, sort of like the ease, how easy it is for you to laugh, how easy it is for you to smile. It's all about getting to that state first rather than relying on external things to bring it to you. And then allow those external things to give you even more happiness on top of your already joyful state. Okay, so what I'd like to do next is just talk a little bit about the idea of the motivational mechanism. So in talking about this, what I put out about this presentation is that with the motivational mechanism, it's sort of like, okay, stilling the mind and then getting this thing of the motivational mechanism might sound a little strange or out of place in terms of meditation. It might seem a little like too technical, but I found something really interesting about the general motivational mechanism that drives human consciousness and how it relates to dealing with trauma, how it deals with just processing shadows, just with everything. So this is just an image of, a carrot dangled on a stick. A lot of times what will be referred to in the motivational mechanism will say, well, do you go with the carrot or the stick? Or you've all heard the expression good cop, bad cop. That's like an interrogation method that cops use. Is basically it's about some people respond more to pleasure and some people respond more to pain or the threat of pain. One of the things that I found really interesting in this, and just like a little side note, is it's just kind of funny to me that the carrot and the stick is the archetypal sort of motivational mechanism in human consciousness and like just humanity in general. And it's kind of funny to me that like the big reward is a carrot and the big threat is a stick. I really don't know how many nightmares on a daily basis involve sticks or how many fantastic dreams involve carrots. Just saying. If anyone has any ideas of other great, if there's anyone out there who can create memes and circulate them around social media and get them started, you might want to about upgrading the old carrot and stick thing, because seriously, it's kind of funny. But Trader Joe's has these little carrot cake things with the carrot cake icing in between these two little cookie things. So I think that's carrots might be taking it to the next level, but still not feeling a lot of threat from sticks. Okay, so what I'd like to do is just talk just a little bit about this motivational mechanism. And usually what it is we are doing whatever we can to move into to pursue pleasure and to avoid pain. So what it is a lot of times we can sit around and we can watch people behaving a certain way, and we might think that our own internal blueprint is the same blueprint that everyone else has. That, oh yeah, well, we're doing the same type of thing, so we are all working from the same blueprint, we're all working from the same basic reality, that we're all kind of functioning the same way. But actually two people can be doing the exact same thing for opposite reasons. I'll use one quick example of, like, say for example, going to the gym, like working out. There could be two people doing the same workout, and one person could be just doing it because they love the experience of working out. They love how their body feels. They love the experience of growth, that little bit of soreness the next day and feeling satisfied that they expanded that way. they just feel like they just love that growth. They love that process. This person who might be working out right next to them might be thinking about how they were, overweight when they were little, or that they really hate the idea of being overweight or whatever it might be, and they might have total judgment about this and say, well, it really hurts to work out, but the pain of working out is less than the pain of not being in shape. So, so two people can be doing the same thing, but they can be doing it for opposite reasons. So, and it's funny too, because what happens is your brain is always seeking to move into things that are pleasurable, always seeking to avoid things that are painful. So whenever people feel a mix of pain and pleasure with what they do, there always creates this sort of polarity of like this one step forward, one step back thing. And what ends up happening is there is this difficulty that they kind of get entangled. They're kind of going in two different directions. And what would be so much easier for them is to like look at the ways in which they experience pain and find what's a pleasurable way of doing the same thing. Because a lot of times it's just coming down to like asking different questions, moving consciousness in a different way. It can be as simple as just a quick perceptual shift. One real quick example of this, it's so simple, is that in terms of human physiology, most joints have like a push and pull. Like say, for example, you can lift a weight up off the ground with your arms using your biceps, or you can push something away from you using your triceps. Like they move opposite from each other. But say, for example, someone was lifting a heavy weight up, but they tensed their whole arm. What's going to happen is they're fighting their own polarity. They're actually fighting the tension in their triceps. That's actually making it harder for their biceps to lift the muscle. And in the same way, when we get entangled with pain and pleasure, what ends up happening is we feel the split. We feel like we're moving in one direction, but we're moving in another direction. And a lot of times what happens is that's when people start to plateau, or if they start to move in a certain direction and they get self-sabotage, like maybe for example, they're working out, but they do it for a little bit and they enjoy it a little bit, but they feel so much pain with it that there's this back and forth. And what ends up happening is there's just too much pain involved, and ultimately they injure themselves, or there's some type of self-sabotage that causes them to not be able to continue. So one of the things that's really interesting is in terms of how this applies to meditation and mental clarity, I never really thought too much about this, but when I was creating the chakra workshop that I teach, and I discovered that the chakra system is actually an instrument. It's actually part of your physiology, but it is actually an instrument. And in the same way that an instrument can play single notes or chords, your chakra system does exactly the same thing, among other things, but it plays these single vibrational tones and also sort of chords, if you will. And the result, instead of audible music, is actually an energetic state of consciousness or state of energy. So when I was working with the chakras and doing my meditations and experimenting and working through processes and things like that, it became clear that there's two types of things that can happen with chakras. I mean, well, of course they can be balanced, but the two sort of challenges that people might have with chakras is if there's excess energy or deficient energy. And how the deficient energy and the excess energy ties together is basically the good old-fashioned fight or flight response. And if somebody had a traumatic event early on in their life, and say, for example, they had the fight response, and say, for example, that energy center was primary to that memory, if they were feeling like, okay, I have to fight this person, that there's that fight response, that sort of anger or aggression response, what ends up happening is that chakra becomes excessive. And Wilhelm Reich used the term armoring, that you basically are sort of fortifying that chakra. You're sort of shielding it by putting extra energy in it. So that's what becomes excessive. At the same time, certain chakras can become deficient. And what that is that could relate to trauma early on in life, it can be more recent too, but a lot of times it's something early on, at a time where there is this perceived pain or threat, but the pain was so overwhelming, or the threat was so overwhelming, that the consciousness literally vacated. It left because, it just felt that there was no real way of winning. It just felt that, okay, well, I'm going to lose big, but what I need to do is sort of mentally go to my happy place, vacate, get out of here, because the feeling of consciousness leaving because the threat of pain was so great that the only hope is to minimize the effect of it by just leaving. Unfortunately, that doesn't work that well, because what happens is that just stores the trauma to deal with later. It's sort of like what we mentioned before about toxins in the body. It's like storing these little bits of trauma for us to work with later. And so, I knew that, and I was working through that, and I wrote my class and everything, like my workshop on chakras. But when I started working with the idea of pain and pleasure, and I started thinking about meditation, and I was reflecting on what helped me, my meditations become more still, more quiet, my mind just naturally, peacefully settle in, I realized that it's when I enjoyed my experience. When I first started meditating, I was just teaching myself. I had bought Philip Kapilow's The Three Pillars of Zen, and I was doing Shikantaza and all of these practices just from a book. And I was very focused and sort of austere about it, and willful, of like, I will still my mind, I will I will have perfect mental clarity and all this other stuff. And I kind of had judgment about not having that, and I felt like, this sort of feeling of like being behind, of like, oh, there's these little kids that get into monasteries, and I kind of felt a little bit behind, like, oh, I'm already like, in my teens, and I haven't started meditating yet, and like the feeling of being behind and wanting to catch up. So I felt some pain, and then that drove me to be very austere and very focused about the practice, but at the same time very pointed as well, like really pointed. And I basically was doing something where I wasn't enjoying myself, and after a little bit, my ability to my ability to have quiet, still meditations really really was difficult. So it wasn't until I took a little time, maybe didn't meditate for a week or so, and then started back into it. At one point, I just really kind of settled in and thought, it would be really, this feels really good. My body feels good like this. My breathing, it just feels good to sit like this. And as soon as I started sinking in and really feeling it and enjoying that whole process, as soon as that happened, it just really, I noticed my mind got very still. And I realized that when I did this whole process, I was able to, drop my mind to a very still and very centered level. And I didn't really think too much about it. I thought, oh, that's really good. And I just kind of started enjoying meditation, and knew that the whole willful kind of contracted way of doing it is not really, was not really the best. It wasn't until recently that I started looking at this whole thing and looking back to my history of what worked for me, and I realized that the same thing, the same psychological consciousness mechanism that causes us to, say, for example, embrace pleasure and avoid pain. As soon as that happens, that's basically showing how consciousness moves. And what happens is, if you can find something in the meditation that you enjoy, your consciousness will embrace it. So the pleasure that's integrally involved and interwoven with this experience, your consciousness will just, it'll just, like a magnet, it'll attract it. If you feel the willfulness and the austerity and the desire to push through, then what happens is, more often than not, what ends up happening is the consciousness, will kind of sabotage it, because there'll be this mixture of pain and pleasure. So, and also too, I was thinking back to, like, what are some experiences when I was really loving what was going on? And you can think back to for yourself too. Think about some experience that you had that was just beautiful, where, say for example, like you were like a little kid having some real fun experience, or you were in an amusement park riding a ride. Say for example, like just amazing sex, amazing food, whatever it is you'd like to think of, think back to one of those times now, and maybe you can get a sense of like how still was your mind. Was your mind very still? Was it very active? What was really happening in the whole process that you're doing? How present were you? Was there some mental chatter going on? Was there something that was judging and picking apart your experience? So hopefully not, but what I've found is through working with this and reflecting on this is the greatest pleasure, like the things that we just love so much, that actually causes our consciousness to zoom right in and focus on it. Whereas, if there's some pain involved, they will somehow, some self-sabotage will creep in and cause us to, have some problems with it. So what I'd like to talk about next is, just the whole thing of, also too, there's the saying of like, no pain, no gain. And instead of saying no pain, no gain, maybe another way of thinking about it would be no pain, no polarity. So if you can just take the pain out of the equation, you won't necessarily suffer the same polarity and the same problems that people have when they go through the feeling a mixture of pain and pleasure when they're doing those things. Okay, so what I'd like to do next is talk just a little bit about enjoyment and a little bit about what's happening with this. One of the things that's really interesting is, this is just sort of like a funny little thing with the English language, but the prefix en, en, usually means to go out. It's like to encircle, to enshrine, to entomb is like to go out and cause some external thing. The thing that's interesting about the word enjoy, it actually sounds like it's in joy, like being in a state of joy. And joy is basically, there's actually no causative sense. There's not a something doing outside of yourself. What's really happening is something's happening within yourself. And another way of thinking about it is usually en is about entering something, of going out in a certain direction. But what it's really doing when you enjoy something, you're actually receiving. It's that same motion, but it's the opposite. It's actually something that you're taking in, something that's happening with your own consciousness. And a lot of times, in terms of when I'm working with something, I always check myself. There's certain questions that I ask myself with certain things. Like I'll say, well, there's like a list of questions, and one of the ones I'll look at is like shadows and polarity. Is there any mixture of pain and pleasure in what I'm doing? And if so, is there a way to make it easier or more fun or more pleasurable? And I found more often than not that a lot of times when I'm willing myself through something, if I'm like applying a lot of willpower, what that is there's just unexamined aspects that I'm not really fully using. And there could also be some, basically, a lot of times it's like a lack of creativity is what causes the willpower, or the need for willpower. If I'm not really being creative and flowing into the whole thing and just playing with it like a little kid, like a curious little kid saying, what if I did it this way? How about I do it this way? And try shifting different ways of doing it to see what actually would work for you. So that's just one of the things I was going to say. In terms of enjoyment, the other thing about it too is, we'll talk about feedback loops. So the whole idea of feedback loops is what you focus on expands, and if you feel pleasure and you move into something in a state of pleasure and you just really fully love it, what happens is what you focus on expands, what you enjoy or appreciate expands as well. And another word for if you have an investment that grows in value, is you say it appreciates in value. So that kind of got me thinking when I was working with the whole idea, the motivational mechanism of what you love, your consciousness tends to flow towards. Things you find painful, it tends to go away from. And I thought, well, what about feedback loops? I'm actually doing some reading right now on systems thinking and a few other disciplines that are really different than consciousness in general. But I've really learned some interesting things in studying systems. Like systems thinking also deals with natural systems like ecology. But what I've been doing is applying it to the subtle energy system of the body, to consciousness, to a lot of different things, to really see, how to work things. One of the things that's interesting about consciousness and using this feedback loop is if you focus on something in such a way that it grows, and then you focus on that expanded state to cause it to grow again, that's actually a feedback loop. And we'll talk in just a minute about how to do that with consciousness. And one of the fun little facts that I learned about studying systems thinking is that feedback, what it really means is if you send something out, if you say something to someone, say for example, like the whole idea of like giving someone feedback, if you give someone some input, you say, hey, here's what I think about this, or here's what I observed in your behavior. If they make some type of change, then it technically is feedback. But if they don't, if they completely ignore you, technically you didn't give them feedback. Because feedback has to be given in such a way that it changes what's coming to you. Like one of the classic examples is, if you see like old, footage of like Jimi Hendrix, like with his guitar, creating all that screeching high feedback with his guitar. What's happening that is that the sound coming out of the amps goes into the pickups, which then gets sent out to the amps, and it keeps expanding. The idea of like someone, everyone's always had the experience of seeing someone speak in public. Maybe they're at a podium and there's a microphone and it's turned up too loud, and they kind of lean in and say, "Is this thing on?" And then all of a sudden there's this like this high feedback, this high squealing feedback. Well, the thing that's interesting about that is like what's happening is their voice got so loud that the sound from the speaker went into the microphone, which went back to the speaker, and it kept expanding. So in studying systems and working with this whole thing of feedback loops, I was thinking, well, what if you focus in and allow your consciousness to sink into some layer of your physiology, some layer of your being, and you do it in such a way that you appreciate it, and that appreciation expands, and the more it expands, the more full energetic state there is to appreciate, which would create a feedback loop. So what I'm going to do now is just there's a meditation I really like to do with everybody. Take you all through this process, and this is what I came up with, several days ago. I think it was like the second of this meditation, and I would just like to guide everyone through this as a way to just kind of see, just what everyone experiences from it. And I'd love to just guide everyone through this meditation, and then just maybe do like a little bit of Q&A afterwards in the chat box. Okay, so if everyone, and hopefully no one's driving, so ideally this is going to be something that you can do if you're just sitting alone. You can sit back, find a comfortable place to sit, kind of settle in and relax. A good way to do this is to sit, maybe not so you're leaning back into a chair, but you're sort of like, you lean back into the chair and then come back up slightly. Lean to your left, right, front, back a little bit. You kind of curve your lower back out a little bit, sort of as if you're sort of sticking your butt out a little bit. So if you could just do that part, okay? And now kind of lean back a little bit until you feel like you're just past that center point, forward till you're just past that center point, and then see if you can come to a balance point between forward and backward. Okay, and now do the same thing left and right. And you can just kind of rest your hands in your lap. So find that balance point where you're front, back, balance point, left, right, balance point, until you feel that one point of balance where it's just very easy for you to maintain. It just feels almost as if you're not sitting but being sat. So just find this point now. Okay, and you might want to do even some minute movements, left, right, front, back, and just feel what all's going on. Just feel whatever you're sensing. Okay, once you find this balance point, just intend that this state of balance is just easily and automatically maintained with or without your conscious attention, that you can just allow this to continue. Okay, take a nice deep breath in and allow it out. Okay, now do this 2 more times and just let all the tension go, any tension you might have in your body. Allow it out. Okay, now 1 more time. Breathe in and allow it out. And just allow any last little bits of tension to just flow out of your body. Okay, now just rest your hands in your lap. And now just allow your attention to start to move and sort of withdraw into your chest. It's almost like if you've seen water pooling. Just allow your awareness to shrink and move and sort of draw from the extremities of your body until you're feeling your chest, where you still might have some awareness of your body, the rest of your body, but you're just very, very aware of your chest. And now tune into your breathing and just feel the way, almost like this watery feeling of the lungs just gently filling with air, and then gradually and just gently allowing that to flow out. And just this really easy giving and receiving, this just flowing of energy, flowing of air into your lungs and flowing out. So just take a couple moments and just take a moment and just really see as best you can to really enjoy this feeling of this breath. And now, as best you can, just sense your lungs and sense how your lungs are soft and gentle, that just naturally receives the air, naturally allows the air to flow out. And just enjoy the feeling of this. Just the feeling of this life, this energy, and this life-supporting air flowing into your lungs. You don't have to struggle for it. You don't have to go out and find it. Just allow it to be easy and just enjoy it. And now, as best you can, tune in to where your heart is and see if there's any way you can sense your heartbeat. And see if you can sense even the faintest pulse. You don't necessarily have to touch your throat, but just see if you can move your awareness deep enough into your chest where you feel your heart beating. And again, just allow this process and note the easiness of your breathing, and how easily and automatically your heart is beating. Okay, and now tune in to your heart and your lungs, and just see if you can sense them both, just as best you can. There's nothing, no way you can do this that's wrong. But if you can just sense the area, just see if you can sense both your pulse of your heart and the breathing of your lungs, just as inhale and exhale. And just see, rather than trying to sense something or trying to do something, just allow it and enjoy it. And if you are able to sense your heartbeat without your fingers, just tuning into your chest and this natural rhythms within your body, kind of congratulate yourself and realize that most people are not aware of their pulse without checking their pulse. Most people don't focus on their breathing unless they're out of breath. That they really just feel their breath and their heart when they're beating very strongly and struggling. Okay, and as you tune into these, your heart and your lungs, see if you could sense energetically how they support you. Just the gentleness of your lungs, that your lungs have this quality of supporting your life. And you can easily control your breath consciously, but it's also, as soon as you're not consciously aware of your breath keeps automatically happening. It just automatically flows. And just allow this appreciation for your lungs to grow stronger, and remember that your lungs have been breathing and keeping you alive ever since you were born, ever since you took that first breath of air when you were born. Ever since then, your lungs have been consistently breathing to support your life. Just allow yourself to enjoy the feeling of this breathing, sort of like the silkiness of the breath. And now if you can sense your heart beating, you might sense it actually beating, you might just have a very clear awareness of it or subtle awareness, but just tune in and feel your awareness go to your heartbeat. And realize that just like your lungs, this is another form of consistency where it's been unwaveringly supporting your life since you were an embryo, since way before you were born. This tiny little beating heart was beating, supporting your life, and helping to grow and develop your body before you were even born. Now just take a moment and just feel your appreciation for your heart and your lungs. And just maybe energetically just kind of offer thanks. Just thank you. Thanks for keeping my body alive. Thanks for keeping me here on earth alive. And just allow yourself to enjoy this feeling. Then again, there's nothing to try to do, there's nothing to achieve. It's really just all right here. And just allow this breathing to become connected and smooth, where at the very bottom of the inhale, the next inhale happens. Again, it's not without trying anything, just allowing it all to flow and to happen. And now, while you're breathing, as you tune in to the rhythm of your breathing, start to sense the skin on your hands, especially your fingers and fingertips. And as you're breathing, see if you can sense any type of fluctuation or change in feeling in response to your inhale and exhale. Does the feeling in the skin of your fingers change at all in response to inhale and exhale? Does it feel one way when you inhale? Does it feel another way when you exhale? Is there any shift in feeling between the two? And any sensation that you experience, just allow yourself to feel that. And now as you notice the rhythm of your breathing, now focus on your face, the skin on your face, and feel if there's any slight change in the feeling of energy in your face between the inhale and the exhale. And this is all about tuning in to feel a very subtle flow of energy. That's why they call it subtle energy. It's very subtle. It's not going to hit you over the top of the head. It's a very subtle flow of energy. And usually between the inhale and exhale, it will feel just slightly different. Okay, and you might also tune into the feeling of your throat or your neck. And again, see if there's any difference between the inhale and the exhale and the feeling of the skin. Just the feeling just of the skin or the surface of the skin, a type of energy feeling. Just see if you can sense any difference either way. And now you can just remember a time where maybe it was in the summertime at night where the air was warm and there might have been like a breeze, like a warm breeze. Maybe when you were little, if you went to the beach or you're in some warm climate and there was a gentle, pleasant breeze. It didn't feel cold at all, but you just allowed the feeling, the pleasurable feeling of this breeze to move over your skin. Just remember that as best you can. Any type of feeling of a warm breeze or a comfortable breeze, maybe even on a hot day, feeling a breeze that just made things more comfortable. And now tune in to this change in feeling on the surface of your skin. Just choose whichever place you felt the clearest difference in energy, your fingers, face, your throat, your neck. Just allow yourself to fall into this easy and automatic breathing, this rhythmic breathing. And if you felt any type of difference in the skin, the energy on the skin, any type of sensation that's different between the inhale and exhale, just note that you're sensing your body's flow of vital energy. And just maybe congratulate yourself if that's something that's new to you, if you've never experienced that before, that's a very simple way of starting to experience this. And now just allow this sensation. The more you feel this sensation, the more you appreciate it, and the more feel in to sense any extra sensation that's happening. The more you focus on it, the more you enjoy it, the more it expands. The more it expands, the more there is to perceive and enjoy. Just allow this feeling to grow and grow, feeling this flow of vital energy in response to your breath. And now take a moment and just notice if you've managed to fall into this feeling of like you're carried away on the gentle swells of an ocean, just moving up and down, sort of being carried by the breath, and you're just sort of enjoying this flow of subtle energy. Just note how much talking there is in your head. When you're in the moment of feeling this subtle energy and enjoying it, how busy is your mind? Or is it talking? Is it quiet? But just note the quality of mental stillness and sort of the feeling of like you're just soaking it in. You're just enjoying that sort of ebb and flow of the breath, your body's energetic response to this ebb and flow. And now realize that if you felt some mental stillness, how rare and precious that is in a mind where there's always new things for the mind to think about and things for the mind to pursue. That just being able to settle in and have your mind silent and also just enjoying the experience of being itself is rare. Usually we need to get stimulated by things outside of ourselves in order to feel pleasure. We need to eat something, we need to talk to someone, we need to see something, we need to go somewhere, we need to be on vacation. All of these reasons and excuses to feel joy are all great, but when you learn to tune in to the subtle energy and really feel these things and enjoy these things, your breath and your heartbeat have never stopped. This flow of subtle energy have never stopped. Your ability to enjoy them and tap into them is always there. It's just a matter of, do you choose to sense this? Do you choose to be aware of this? And this is something that the more you bring it into your daily life, you could be waiting in line at the store and waiting in line for groceries or whatever it is. And you can just be physically present. You're not going to collapse on the floor into a lotus position and close your eyes. You're just going to just allow yourself to enjoy being. This flow of breath, this flow of, this beating of your heart, this flow of subtle energy in the body. Just allow yourself to enjoy this. And know that this is an aspect of your experience that's always with you. And the more you're aware of it, the more you can dive into this mentally still place, the more you can use the idea of a feedback loop of the more you focus on something, the more it expands, and the more you enjoy it, the whole thing of like the pain and the pleasure, your consciousness loves pleasure. So the more you allow your consciousness to dive in and sense the pleasure of something, the more you have to appreciate. The more it expands, the more there is to appreciate. So you can be doing this. It's good to practice in meditation, but my thing is teaching people how to take this into their lives, take this into their daily, ordinary existence and relationships with other people in such a way that how they live their lives is different. Okay, so whenever you're ready, if you can take a nice deep breath, allow it out. Okay, and now you can open your eyes. If they were closed, you can kind of turn around, kind of roll your shoulders back. Okay, well, I hope everyone had a great meditation. I hope that everyone had an experience of feeling the mind becoming still, feeling an enjoyment of subtle energy flow, and just enjoying the state of being itself. And this is something that I just wanted to share with you, that there's this this lotus, and this process that I have. This is something actually part of something larger that I've been working on for a little bit, and I just wanted to take just a couple of minutes and just share with you what I've been doing. So first off, these are the image credits. I just wanted to take this, and anyone, the recording, or on, probably post this on YouTube later, people can, use this, like if they'd like to, understand like where I got the images, they can do that. So what I'd like to share with you now, we're close to the 8:30 mark. I just wanted to share a little bit about what I've been doing. And this is what's called a pilot program. And a pilot program is a program that is very interactive. Like, I'm choosing to do it in a way that's very, very interactive with everyone who participates in it. And what I'm calling it is C. It's Subtle Energy Evolution. And this is all about being able to tap into subtle energy. We just did this tiniest little bit of it today, just the tiniest little bit. But what we're going to do is we're going to learn how to tap in to subtle energy and learn how to live your life in a different way through using subtle energy. So what I did was I organized it into an 8-week course, and I just have each course being its own module. So if I say module 1, module 2, you'll know that there's just 8 modules. It's 2 months total of this course. So module 1 is all about sensing and building energy. It's building on what we did in today's class. It's sensing subtle energy in and around the body as well. So it's not just sensing it just like we did the tiniest little bit of it today. But it's also about being able to direct energy. It's using the breath and the mind to direct energy. And there's multiple different ways to do it with the mind, multiple ways to do it with the breath. And in this module, I will be sharing how to do various methods for both. The next one is building energy. It's all about generating a field of energy, of concentrated energy that sort of becomes like a battery. It's this concentrated massive energy that you can draw from with whatever you do. And say, for example, if you exercise, if you're doing sports, whatever it is, it'll lead to a better result. You will tend to enjoy it more because there'll be the energy flow. And also, too, the side benefit of it is the more you work with energy and the more you draw energy and use it, the more you're practicing the method of pulling in extra energy to use. So the more you practice drawing it, the more you're increasing your capacity, not just to use it, but to draw it as well. And then there's this process I have called the fully awake process for anyone who's not a morning person, who has trouble waking up or getting going. If there's time that you are just feeling tired during the day, it's something you can do in a few minutes. And it's a very powerful way to build energy and get you ready to go no matter what it is. Okay, so the next module I'd like to share is segmenting and layering. There's something called an ILP. It's an integral life practice. And this is basically a way of allowing yourself to expand in multiple different areas of your life. It is basically balancing the physical, the spiritual, the mental, the shadow, emotional. There's ways that people can develop their own programs that they'll basically find what areas they'd love to expand in. And what it is the ILP is all about customizing it in such a way that you're growing in all of the ways that you would love to grow. But it's balanced progress it's balanced and consistent. So it's not like you're majoring in something and then all of a sudden you're forgetting it and you're doing something else and then forgetting that. It's really about this balanced, consistent process of growth. So the next thing is developing, in this second module, it's about helping everyone to develop and use their own custom ILP to expand more of what they love most. There's a process that I created called layering and segmenting, and this is how to bring the ILP into your everyday life. There's actually a pretty good list of processes and things that I do regularly, but I have my times where I sit and meditate and I stand and I do Qigong and certain things like that. But a lot of the things that I do, I actually found ways of doing them, not just doing them, but actually expanding and progressing doing them while I'm doing other things. So the things I'm doing during the day, that those practices aren't separate practices, they're actually the means by which I do those things during the day. And there's this synergy that happens where not only am the things that I'm doing during the day being done in a more powerful way, there's better results, but also I'm expanding in all those capacities as well at the same time. And it's just another, it's a way of tapping into greater awareness and greater expansion and flow in your daily life. So maybe you're doing something like washing the dishes or some mundane thing, but you can actually be expanding on a multiple, number of different ways in the middle of doing those seemingly mundane tasks. Okay, so module 3 is calling this stilling the mind and texturing awareness. Texturing awareness is actually something that I came up with myself. There's different ways of stilling the mind, and we did just one little aspect, like one facet of this today with sensing subtle energy. There's different methods of stilling the mind, and the thing that's really interesting for me is that I've tried a number of these different things and had experiences with different aspects of them, but I learned that there's a number of different things for stilling the mind that actually connect together like puzzle pieces. It's like they all fit together to connect to create some larger state of awareness. It's like an emergent state. It's like these things all come together and they click and they create a state that's a lot more expanded than any one of those things could be. Okay, module 4, choice and subtle energy. It's being able to tap into subtle energy, using it both as a compass and a vehicle, or maybe you'd like the analogy of a GPS. It's basically ways of navigating your everyday life, but also having more energy to carry you through to do those things. Because basically it comes down to two things. It's navigating through your life, but then giving you enough energy to go in the direction that you choose, and making sure you have a fullness of energy, you have an abundance of energy to do whatever it is that you choose to do. There's this method I developed called the Optometrist Method, which is all about being able to discern, using sort of the subtle energy as a GPS. It's being able to discern the different aspects of it. It's being able to sense through and find detail exactly what your energy system is telling you about different things. And it's also a way of being able to end procrastination, because a lot of people have challenges with that. It's getting going instead of feeling the resistance to taking some type of action. The other thing too is that it's really about curing procrastination through working with energy resonance. And there's different ways to work with this that we're going to be exploring in this one. There's also the idea of setting what I call an energetic focal point. Okay, so module 5 is uncovering beliefs. just like we talked about before, the whole thing about shadows, so much of what we believe that we absorbed when we were, when we were growing up, a lot of that is actually subconscious. And one of the reasons for this is children under the age of 10 years old, I believe it's like they get to like delta and then theta and then alpha. And it's not until they get after 10 years old that they really get past alpha and they get into beta. The thing that's interesting about that is those are the brain states that hypnotists use to hypnotize people. So one of the reasons, if you ever see a parent and a child and the child is standing the same way, using the same facial expressions, it's not just the parent telling them what to do, imparting, basic things like that. Energetically, the kid is being hypnotized, all their waking life. They're basically in a hypnotic state, taking suggestion all the time, which the fact that this is true of everybody, it's one of the things that's very important to start reflecting back and start uncovering those beliefs, uncovering what are those shadow aspects that I have, what are the beliefs that I believe are mine, that I believe are true about myself, that I believe are true about the world, that I was so young when these came in. I have no idea of discerning it. I have no idea of sifting and sorting and saying, well, I believe this is true, this is really not true for me anymore. A lot of times when it's imparted when you're very small and you're in that hypnotic state growing up, it just sticks. So unless you find some way of uncovering these beliefs, usually they just sort of will be running the show or limiting you in some way. To some degree, there's some limitation happening with that. And it's just like I said before about the idea of being triggered, is there's usually some type of causal point, some type of belief that's behind those types of things. And it can be penning us in and holding us in a room that we don't know we're in. It's sort of the idea of being held in a prison or held in a space without the freedom to move beyond it. And it's in such a way that we don't really know exactly how to transform it to kind of climb over the wall to escape that sort of bondage. There's also the process I'm going to share about sensing light and shadow with energy, like the subtle energy awareness, about how to find these shadows with subtle energy awareness. There's also sensing and shifting time frames, about like the time frames for projects, like when's the right time frame for a goal, for a project, those types of things. There's this whole thing about using energy to sense time frames. It's very powerful. That can help us set appropriate goals and move in the right direction without taking on too big or too little of a project or having unreasonable time frames. There's a process I have called the Subtle Energy Goal Method, which is working with goals. There's also the Coin Flip Method, which we'll have, we'll get into that Module 5 as well. Okay, so the next one is Energy Ecology of Relationships. The Energy Ecology of Relationships is basically the energetic flow back and forth between individuals, between like an intimate relationship, a couple, friends, family. There's this sort of natural energy ecology that's happening between individuals that are in a relationship together. So we'll be exploring this in Module 6. It's the relationships with yourself, with Source, and with others. So Source or Spirit, God, whatever you'd like to call it, it's basically that spiritual connection, that connection with yourself and with others. What's the energetics of those relationships? We will be seeking and expanding the relationships for people that are looking for a type of relationship, or people who are looking to expand on relationships. There's different processes that work either way. Okay, there's what I call flows, aspect, and reciprocals, ways of working with different aspects of relating. There's deepening your experience of relationships, how to relate authentically and with a state of presence. And the more present you are, the more you are in this energetic state that we just had a little tiny taste of today, that's fully anchored, fully present, fully alive. The more authentic you can be and the more present you can be, the more relationships will tend to expand from that. And then deepening relating through expanded perception. So there's the idea of getting into an expanded state and from that expanded state, there's more perception happening. And just the same way that if you're talking to someone on the phone, you can perceive a certain amount. If you're in person with them, you can perceive more. There's body language, there's all of these different things. There's voice inflection that you catch in person or on the phone. When you start to sense subtle energy, you'll be more aware of your own body's subtle energetic response to people, and you can start to sense their energetic response to things. So by tapping into that expanded awareness, you'll be functioning from a lot more knowing, a lot more information. Okay, module 7 is shifting behavior. So there's this process, this tool that I have called the scale of choice. There's also the idea of vibrational relativity. That's a concept I'll get into in module 7. There's changes, the whole idea of making change and shifting to a different type of thing, and the idea of metal fatigue. And one of the things about, there's some principle of metal fatigue, of how metal bends and behaves, that is actually really strongly related to what I'm going to be sharing in shifting behavior. And this gets back to the last point, playing with energy and consciousness versus exerting your will. And this gets back to the point that I was talking about of, are you coming from a place of creativity and playfulness and lightness with energy, or are you coming from a place where you just muscle through it? You just will yourself through it. You push yourself through it. So this is, one thing that's very important is being able to play with things and be light and playful and childlike and joyful about these things. And it's just a matter of a different mindset. And we are going to be exploring that in detail in Module 7. Okay, Module 8, I call the alchemy of energy and consciousness. It's energetic shifting, and it's shifting thinking, knowing, and embodying. So I can't really say too much about this, but it's going from thinking to knowing, from knowing to embodying, and it's shifting from different possibilities and realities into other ones. And it's basically energy, consciousness, and sort of the play of becoming. What I mean by that is saying that the whole process of becoming happens most easily and fluidly when it's playful, when it's this movement of this play of becoming, where it's not like you have to or you should or anything like that, that it's more childlike, it's more like fun, it's more like a game. And in this final module, we basically take all of the pieces that we did up until this point, and we put them all together and move from sensing energy and understanding it, being able to gather it to use it for things, and now Module 8 is when we take all of those different aspects, put it all together, and are able to shift into different states. And like I said before, these classes, it's not like I'm sending recordings. These are live classes. It's interactive web conferencing. This is where I will be together with a small group of people. And depending on the response from this program, I would do either one group or two groups. And if it's two groups, I can maybe look to see people East Coast, West Coast, whatever it is, to make sure that the time zone, works for everybody. It's simple and incremental processes. It's not something that's going to be very abstract. I'm going to be focusing on very simple, very usable, pragmatic experiences and processes and things that people can make shifts easily. Also, there's going to be homework and processes for each week. This is not homework like write an essay type of homework or old painful type of thing. What this really is I'm going to be creating just through Google Documents, so everyone has access. All the computers will be compatible with it, and Google Drive. People can use these things, and they can use them. They can email them. So I can collect them and everything. And it's a way of helping you make these shifts gently each and every week. That there'll be this interactive Q&A. It's not like this. I mean, webinars are okay, but it's not really my favorite thing. My favorite thing is I love being able to sit in a group of people, an amazing group of people, talk about consciousness, lead people through meditations, and I love that interactive aspect of it. So I was thinking, well, how could I work with this in this case. So what it is it's live interactive video conferencing where we can all see each other, we can all share. It's not just like slides and one voice talking in one direction. It's dialogue, it's collaboration, it's all of these things. Just sharing experiences through the process. And like I said, there's simple incremental processes where people can work with something through the whole week, like little bits of it, and they'll make a big shift by the next session. And also, too, I'm going to be creating a closed and secret Facebook group for the class. Or if there's 2 sections of people, if I need to do 2 sections, then it'll be 2 classes. But what I'm going to do is have a closed secret Facebook group so people can pose questions, share experiences, just connect with each other, talk back and forth, just share ideas. One of my favorite things is when I teach this workshop, the ATIH workshop, one of the, most workshops, on the first day, when we're all talking, getting to know each other, I'll basically say, okay, everyone who is the weird one in their family, raise your hands, and automatically almost everyone's hand goes up. Sometimes everyone's hand goes up, and everyone looks around the room and start laughing, like, oh yeah, okay, well, okay, yo, I'm in the right place. This is a place where you can connect with people who are like-minded, who are working through the same stuff you are. A lot of times when I have students with the ATIH, the Awakening the Illuminated Heart workshop that I teach, they will have questions. We'll go in, do meditation, and come out. And when they share about the meditation, everybody learns. So I figured out that by doing a closed secret Facebook group, because it's closed and it's secret, it's only for people who are in this class, and because it's secret, things you post in this group aren't going to show up in your timeline. So you can get as weird as you like. You don't have to worry about, your some family member or some friend or some work colleague seeing something that you post about subtle energy. It's all going to be closed, all going to be within this group. So I want to know everyone that it's going to be, even though we're separated geographically, we will be all together energetically, all together sharing for these live in-person video classes and doing the homework and sharing through this Facebook group. So when I teach the ATIH workshop, the Awakening the Illuminated Heart workshop, it's a 4-day workshop and it's $444. And it's totally worth it. It's really a powerful workshop. People have amazing shifts. I've had so many people that have had unbelievably great shifts happen. And the only thing is sometimes people at the end of it, it's such an intensive, kind of shake their head. I'm like, what just happened? And they have all these amazing experiences, but for some people, they're like, that's kind of intense. That's a lot of shifts. That's like decades worth of growth and meditation in 4 days. So it's a little bit intense. So one of the things that I did with this is to spread it out over 8 weeks where you can have one good solid chunk, one solid theme that you're working on for that week and dive in, experience it with, there's the homework they'll give out that'll help you carry it into your daily life, make shifts each day, and then when you come back and complete that, the next week will be the next module. And then we'll go on from there. And anyone who has any questions or problems or support, I'll make my email, my cell, everything available to everybody. People can also post questions in the Facebook group, and the group can dialogue about it. So this is just a very different energy dynamic than the 4-day intensive. It's 8 weeks, but it's deep. But what it is each thing, there's a seed and then it grows for a week, and then there's another point and it grows for a week. And by the end of it, you'll find yourself in a very different place. Okay, so what I'm doing, the tuition for the 8-week pilot course is $222. So what this breaks down to is $27.75 per week for the 8 weeks. And basically, it's about on par for people that do yoga. It's on par with a yoga class. And a lot of times, yoga is beautiful. There's so many amazing things that happen from it. But what I'd like to do is do something where people can dig in, sort of go vertical, really dig into their own consciousness, dig into their sense of subtle energy, their ability to just enjoy the feeling of being, to have stillness during the meditations, to have more illuminated and rewarding relationships through knowing how to be more present and to feel more of that subtle information flow that gives them a lot more information to work from. Another option I'd like to open up for people that might not be might not know what's the best. If this is really something that they'd like to do, I'm doing for 8 weeks is 222. But if someone just wanted to do the 4 weeks, because the first 4 weeks is really good in and of themselves, really powerful, is the 155. And if someone would like to just kind of stick their toe in the water but still have deep experiences for these 4 weeks, it'll be the 155. And basically, if they, after a week or two, if they feel like, yeah, this is great, I'd really love to continue this, what I could do is just, later on in the module, I would just send them a private invoice for 155 for the other half. So you could see by doing the 222 for the 8 weeks, it really gives you a very powerful set of tools, a large set of tools, a powerful set of tools, but enough time to fully step into it and fully expand and fully integrate each lesson, each module, until you go to the next one. Also, too, another thing I was going to say, if people, if you feel like you'd really love to do the 8 weeks, and you are concerned about, what your experience would be with it, just know that if anyone starts the program and they are not satisfied for any reason, I'm happy to give them a money-back guarantee, no questions asked. And yeah, and so basically what it is the class begins on 7/13 and it concludes the last day of August. This is a Wednesday. I'm going to be doing the class once a day on Wednesday. And I'm thinking if it's going to be one group, it's most likely going to be at 6 o'clock or 7 o'clock on Wednesday. This is something that just the thing that was like East Coast, West Coast would be easiest for people. If there's enough people, I will do 2 sections. People that want to do it a little bit earlier, a little bit later, might make it easier for people in different time zones. And also, for people that might have other obligations, maybe they can make most of the sessions, but maybe they can't make all live sessions. If someone is not able to make a live session or several live sessions, every single class that I do, I will record the whole thing and I will post it in the Facebook group. So if anyone feels that they're not able to do all of them or whatever, but they'd still like to have the experience of it, that they can see the session in the Facebook group, they can really fully understand it, they can dialogue and start threads and chat with other people that are part of that same group. And there's lots of live interactive sharing that can be done on Facebook. You can post a thread in terms if you were unsure about something, and also I will make sure I'm always available to answer questions. You can call, text, or email as well. So I know that went by kind of fast, the thing about the pilot program. So if you'd like to, if you are interested, even curious about just reading through it again and just feel through what works for you, if you just go to paulreimers.com/pilot, if you just go, everyone who received the email from me, I always have my website at the bottom, the signature. You can also go to click the link at the bottom of my email. It's just the paulreimers.com, and you'll see a tab called Pilot. You can click on Pilot, and there will be all of the description of each module. Because I know I kind of just breezed through them quickly because I wanted to we're a little bit over in time, but I just wanted to make sure to just present it efficiently as far as what I'm doing in the pilot program, and to do it in such a way that I can get through all the information, and then you can always go on the website and read a little bit more about the details of all of it. The last thing I was going to mention is, for any reason, $222, for most people is not really that much money. But I was going to mention, if you feel strongly guided to do this, that you would love to have the experience of this, but finances are an issue, you can always contact me. Anyone who received an email from me, who's ever been in a workshop from me, has my email, my cell, some way of getting in touch with me. But if you are interested, but you're just not sure, how to swing it in terms of money, I've never turned anyone away if they didn't have the money together for a workshop. I'm happy to work out payment plans. I'm happy to work with people on it. So I just wanted to mention that last little bit of information, just to let you know that, if you do strongly feel guided to do that and money is a challenge, then I'm happy to do that. Because I found that using these tools actually help in a lot of different areas, and I wouldn't want anyone to not be able to participate for something for a reason that could actually be helped by this. So I do everything I can to make sure that this is something that will work for people on all levels. So what I'd like to do now, it's a little bit past. I was hoping to be finished at 8:30. We started a little bit late because not everyone was on right off the bat, and also too I kind of started talking a little bit just to kind of get a sense of where everyone is at, just to allow some more people to show up. So what I'd like to do now is, if you'd like to go onto the website, the webpage, paulreimers.com, just click on the tab Pilot, or you can go to paulreimers.com/pilot/ or whatever. But what I'd like to do now is, if anyone would like to click on the chat box, I haven't really seen anybody submit any questions or anything in the chat. So what I'd like to do is just open this up. If anyone has anything, again, I know that this is we're over time a little bit, but I just wanted to get a sense. Does anyone have anything that they'd like to share? Any questions they'd have in terms of? And you feel free to use the chat box. Okay. Well, I don't see anyone writing any questions in the chat box. So what I'd like to do is just thank you all so much for being here. Thank you so much for your time. I really appreciate you all being together for this event. I hope that what I shared today helps. Even if you just take away the thing of what you love and appreciate, your consciousness moves towards what you appreciate expands, and the more you allow yourself to just appreciate more and more aspects of it, the more it expands. And it sort of creates a feedback loop where the more you love it, the more you appreciate it, focus on it, the more it expands. And as a result, the more that there is to appreciate. So it can just lead to an upward spiral instead of the downward spirals we hear so much about in a lot of things. So anyway, since there are no comments, I'm going to end the webinar, and I will have a recording of this. So if I will make it available as well. So if anyone who wanted to go through the meditation again, say if you had an inkling of an experience, but it wasn't all that clear, what I'll do is I'll make it available. I'll most likely have the recording uploaded to YouTube, probably embed it on my site so people can watch it and go through that meditation a couple times, if they'd like to. And yeah, so if anyone has any questions, you can email, you can message me on Facebook, you can email me. Some of the people were connected through Skype. Also, if all else fails, there's my website, paulreimers.com. There's the contact me box, and you can click on that and just submit a message, and I'll get back to you. Since no one submitted any questions during this webinar, any questions you have, I would absolutely love to answer them. If I hear any questions from anybody. So anyway, thank you all so much. I'm so grateful that you all came for this talk and this class, and have a beautiful night. And may you use these techniques to feel more peace and more joy in your daily life. Awesome. Well, thank you all so much for being here. All right, bye.